The Philippines has changed. Now, that is a comment that I get quite often when I do my street interviews on my main channel, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Has the Philippines changed? And if so, is it for the better or for worse? On a social media platform, someone writes, I first came to the Philippines around 15 years ago, and it seems things have drastically changed. People were kind, genuine, and unique then. Today, even small children stare at their phone screens as if nothing else exists. It's such an unfortunate situation. I'm going to dive into the comments and we'll go ahead and discuss this question because I do hear this several times whenever I live in the Philippines, whenever I'm there for the past 5 years. It does come up quite often, especially from older people that have been there for decades or have been traveling to the Philippines for decades. We'll dive deep into it and we'll get some different opinions from the comment area. Before we do that, if you're new to the channel, take a quick second, hit the subscribe button. We're reaching 1,000 subscribers, almost halfway there. It really motivates me to make these videos. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first comment. As you stare at the phone and read the comments. Unfortunately, we're part of the problem, myself included. I'm using a camera right now. I'm using the internet. I'm on my phone wherever I go. And sometimes if I'm not on my phone, I feel like I left my wallet behind. It is part of changing society. Some people may like it, some people may not like it, but it's not just the Philippines. It's every country across the world, whether poor, rich, developing country, Western country, Eastern Asian, whatever. People are changing. People have access to a lot more technology, which means they're stimulated a lot more often. They have their phones. We have our phones on social media, going through different TikToks, YouTubes, Instagrams, and children, of course, they need excitement. They have very little attention span, and phones do not help. But is that a bad thing? I don't know, because when I was younger, I would think anybody over 25, 30 was just a fool. They don't know what they're talking about. They're all old heads, and society and culture changes. Another person writes, same as anywhere. Sadly, internet and mobile phones are great to precondition kids with all the woke agendas. Speaking of wokeness, that is a whole topic I don't want to really get into. That's one of the reasons why I no longer live in the West in Canada. Wokeness hasn't quite reached the Philippines. I have seen a slight increase in personally in woke culture, maybe a little bit. I think it's just more becoming Americanized. But then again, the Philippines, as we all know, has been influenced by the West for decades now, of course, throughout history. And of course, if you're younger and you're on your phone quite often, which the Philippines actually is in the top 3 countries most spent time on phones and electronics, so they do get influenced a little bit. The person who made the original post then responds, I'm stunned at how many people think it's okay to kill culture. I personally hate to see what happened to the world the last couple decades. It's inevitable. I think we all, even myself, I hate to see certain things that I was familiar with, accustomed to, felt like I was getting used to, and what I find comfort in to change over time. However, we have to adapt and we have to change with the times or we get left behind. And I think society and culture and countries like that can be affected negatively if we always stay in the past. There's a fine balance between adapting to the new society, new world, like AI, for example, and keeping your customs and traditions the same, because of course you don't want to forget who you are as a person, as a country, as a culture, but you also want to go ahead and modernize with the times and not be left out of the world stage on any capacity. A woman writes, happens everywhere. Also, kids' penmanship these days are way awful than before. Why? Some schools no longer encourage using traditional notebooks and pens. Everything goes right into the iPad. My niece on 8th grade, I swear to God, the writing looks like frozen army of ants. I'm not in school anymore, but I'm surprised that they haven't gone away with the pens already, because even in Canada, everybody does everything on their iPads and notepads and computers and laptops, etc. I'm surprised with the correction tool that's on our, phones, that people will be able to even spell in the future. Here's a fun little fact. Someone writes, have you ever been curious as which country is the social media kingpin? Well, in Manila, social media is huge. As of 2021, the Philippines has the highest social media usage rate in the world, and the internet use is 60% higher than average at 11 hours a day. That's staggering online time, and it's been the way for the past few years. On social media, Filipinos spend an average of 4 hours and 15 minutes every day, making them first world, followed by Colombia. The most used platform in the Philippines is YouTube, closely followed by Facebook and Facebook Messenger. I'm actually a little bit surprised that the number one isn't Facebook. Everybody uses Facebook, not everybody, but a majority of people use Facebook in the Philippines. It's the number one social media app, and I think a lot of that has to do with a lot of promotions coming through the internet providers in the Philippines. Here's a funny little sarcastic remark. Someone says, "Ah, yes, the days of rotary telephones and black and white television make the world great again." This kind of goes back to what I said initially. We do have to, as a society, as a nation, as people, go with the progress. It's really difficult to go against the grain and still be successful in a lot of different factors in life. So it's understandable for sure why the Philippines is changing, just like everywhere else. Some places for the better, some places for the worse, but it's part of just everyday life. Someone writes, "The Philippines to me has been the same from 1982 until now. What brings us back and keeps us coming back regardless of your age, the girls make you smile. What a great quality. It's still a valid reason to keep returning." This person obviously comes here for dating, relationships, and meeting women. And once again, personally for me, I feel like the Philippines women and dating is some of the most, what's the best way I can say it? I guess women here in the Philippines are very approachable, and if they do let you down, they let you down gently and respectfully, and they don't make you feel weird for even having an interest in the opposite sex, right? So, and the people are always smiling. The people I've come across and doing thousands of videos by now, of interviews, I should say, with the Filipinos have always been genuine, kind, happy. Nowhere's perfect. There's going to be stories. There's going to be relationship things that don't work out. There's going to be people getting into altercations. That happens everywhere in the world. But for me personally, it's the least I've had to deal with negative people in the Philippines compared to any other country. So Filipinos, the Filipinas, the women, the dating, and the life in the Philippines are very happy for me personally. I wish I had a chance to live in the 80s, maybe in the 90s, to see how the Philippines was back then, when people were a little bit more like face to face, a little bit more personable, right? Is that a word? Personable? I don't know. Maybe it isn't. But basically, we had to be out there like physically in front of another person to communicate. And I'm not talking about pen pals to the US and back then. I don't know how it was, but I assume that was even more exciting, maybe having to wait a few days to even get a message. Now we get upset when someone doesn't respond to us within a couple of hours via text, right? So I could just imagine the Philippines being this wonderful, beautiful place, maybe a little bit less touristy, maybe a little bit less foreigners everywhere. So the people that were interested in you were really curious about getting to know you. I don't know. I can only imagine. Maybe you guys know it. Leave your comments down below. If you've been coming to the Philippines for the past few years, decades, 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, I'd love to know the biggest differences, the biggest changes, your experiences. I'm sure I would have had a blast if I was there. Let's read a couple more things and I'll tell you guys my personal opinions about whether the Philippines is changing or not. Lastly, someone says, "You don't get out much, do ya?" A little bit sarcasm there, maybe a little bit of a hit back at the original comment, but that's also true. A lot of the stuff that we have issues with that are changing, it's actually in our control. So for example, for myself, if I feel like, let's just say within the past 5 years, that I feel like maybe it's more difficult for me to meet people online. Let's say the quality of women online has drastically changed. They have many more options, many more dating apps, many more people coming to the Philippines, for example. So my selection wasn't as wide as, let's say, even as far back as 5 years ago. For you, it might be 10 years ago. So what could I do about that situation? I can't change the world. I can't change social media. There's no way it's going to happen. But I do have control over my own actions. So what I can do is go outside, talk to people in person, meet people at the malls, the cafes, out in parks, libraries, not libraries, bookstores, I should say. There's a nice couple bookstores in Cebu City. What I can do is actually put some effort into meeting people, so I can change that, and maybe that will go ahead and have some better, more positive results for me. And that's basically it. Like any country, I think the Philippines has to be changing, just like Canada, just like the US. It's impossible not to change. Some countries change a little bit quicker, a little bit faster. Some countries take a little bit longer. Regardless, it's inevitable. And that brings us to the end of this video. I don't want to ramble on about this topic, but I thought I was a bit curious because I've heard this comment several times while doing interviews on my main channel, as I mentioned earlier. If you want to see regular interviews from the Philippines, check out Living Abroad. Maybe you guys came from that channel to this channel. Regardless, yeah, that's my thoughts. Leave your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed this video, drop me a like, take a quick second, hit that subscribe button. It really motivates me to reach 1,000 subscribers. And I'll see you guys probably tomorrow. Bye.